One of the top reasons that people will call us is struggles with adult children. So today we're going to talk about that and how to pray that through and do the best you can do as a parent of an adult child that's maybe not walking with the Lord, or maybe it's an antagonistic relationship for whatever reason. Our guest today is going to give you some insights and talk us through managing that relationship for a good outcome. Mary, it's nice to have you with us here at Focus on the Family.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a blessing.
It is interesting because we watch the topics of what the counseling team are dealing with because it gives us some insight on what to cover. And I think the main reason you're here is because we have seen an uptick in the number of parents that are struggling with adult children. Now, all three of us at the table here have adult children, and so I'm not going to say we're struggling, but there's always things that can be in a better place. And as we begin this conversation, are you seeing it the same way we're seeing it?
I am, and it's pretty constant. And a lot of my conversations with people in my age bracket, this is a big topic. And
what are some of those stresses?
Yeah, so there's a lot. There's some parents out there whose kids are have substance abuse and they're spiraling downward. There's some that are incarcerated. There are some that have deconstructed the faith to oblivion, so they haven't reconstructed, they have deconstructed. There are kids that are exploring different lifestyles and different identities, and a lot of parents who walked through perhaps like the 90s and the early 2000s reading all the parenting books. I think a lot of us have been kind of disillusioned a little bit. I don't know, I've written a parenting book, so I know what that's like, but I think we don't realize that that's not a formula. But we internalize this idea that if I do all the right things, at the other end, I'm going to be guaranteed this Christ-following child who never questions and has an amazing life. And that doesn't always happen because we birthed people with free will. We really love free will for ourselves, but we really don't love free will for our adult children. So that's what I've been seeing.
It's so true. And I can't remember how long ago I heard this, but somebody said, well, Adam and Eve turned on the Lord, right? So even the Lord suffered with his teenagers, you might say. Mary, this is very tender, but it is part of your book, and I want to bring up your childhood. It sounded very chaotic. I'm so sorry for you. Both of us lived in chaotic childhoods. The Lord can redeem that. I mean, that's our story, right? But you were abused sexually as a little girl. Describe just a bit of what those circumstances were, what it made you feel like, and how did you crawl back to somewhere near healthy?
Yeah, I mean, they have this this scale called the ACE, the adult or the adverse childhood experiences, and I think I have all of them except for one. And so I feel like it's great in terms of I can relate to almost anyone that's gone through anything. But yes, sexually abused at age 5 for a year.
By babysitters' friends, right?
Yes, by teenage boys in the neighborhood that were living next door to the babysitter. And then multiple divorces throughout my childhood, a sexually predatory father, and then his death when I was 10 years old. And an only child and super lonely and left alone all the time, food insecure, drugs in the home, growing drugs in a closet. So everything that you can think of that was terrible for a little child, I went through. And yet, during all that time in a godless home where Jesus is only a swear word, I had this longing to know the Lord. And anytime like a secular song would come on that had like hints of God or like an ascendant way, anything like that, I would just cling to those songs. And eventually I met Jesus when I was 15 through the ministry of Young Life, right after being very suicidal and wanting to take my life.
But you know what's amazing? That sense that the Lord cared about you. Somehow you knew that. And I had that same experience. And it's the hardest thing to express to people, isn't it? Like people who are desperate saying, how did you know that you should love God? it felt like in my case, it was just there and present, like God's grace was already there. Do you feel that same way?
I do. And I think for parents of wayward kids too, that's a very calming feeling to know that the Lord is pursuing their kids. And he was pursuing me in so many beautiful, powerful ways that I can't even really explain, except just that it was the Lord. Also, another little gift that he gave me was while when that sexual abuse was happening for a year, I knew that what those boys were doing to me was wrong. And that is a gift, because most sexual abuse victims think it's their fault. And
you put that on them.
I did. And I knew what the evil was. And I actually also had a lot of gumption. And I told my babysitter that this was going on at 5. And of course, she didn't do anything about it. And she said that she would tell my mom, and she didn't. So I thought my mom knew, and this was still going on. So all these like little things that the Lord did were just part of those breadcrumbs of the Lord bringing me to himself, so that by the time I was 15 and I heard the gospel, I was just this is what I've been looking for my whole life. And I like to tell audiences, and then I was completely healed and everything was great. But that was actually the beginning of a very long healing journey. And I just want to let listeners know that if you still feel like you're in the muck and mire, that is very normal, and it's a very long process.
I call it the wobbling years after you make that commitment. I was 15 as well. And then it was the wobble up until about 22 when I actually got it together and understood what it meant to be committed to Christ. You are uniquely equipped, I think, to understand adult children because of everything you went through, right? And I think in part what you just said I want to capture, because you were talking about understanding. You didn't say that, but understanding what they're facing, kind of the battle that they're under right now, whether you have a daughter or a son who's 20, 21, what forces are coming at them, highly sexualized culture, drugs you mentioned earlier, that can be part of it. How do you feel you connected with your own adult children? And I don't know all of that story, but you can share where they have been at. Did you feel like you understood?
It's a really good question. In many ways, yes. In some ways, no. And the no is that because I was on my own for so much and I had to just buck up and deal. I kind of felt like you should just figure this out. You should just buck up and deal. But because I was actually I was a good mom, and I nurtured my kids, and I was with them throughout their lives, and they now come back to me. Some of them call me every day, and we have an amazing, surprising relationship. Not all of them are walking with Jesus, but we're still connected. And I think part of that is this holy curiosity for the marvel that they are. And that, to me, is such a beautiful thing that we, as parents of adult kids, can do, is just be like, I'm so curious. What makes you think this thing that you're thinking? Or I'm so curious about, what are you going to do about this problem? And that has really carried me through that, is just to have this holy curiosity of my kids.
Did you ever feel with your own children, adult children particularly, that nothing's going to surprise me? I mean, whatever they do, I've already been there. I know it. Nothing's going to surprise me. Did they ever surprise you?
Oh, yes. Of course they surprised me. I'm a normal mom with normal adult kids that do abnormally weird things. And so, yes, definitely. And it did kind of unsettle me for sure. Like just this feeling of, oh, goodness, that modicum of control that I thought I had when they were under my roof, which was sort of an illusion, but we like it so much. Really, this just cements that modicum of control. I just realized it wasn't real, and hence the title of the book. What can I do? That's what I came to the title with. What are the 3 things I can do? I can love them, No one's going to prevent me from loving them. I can pray for them. They cannot prevent me from praying for them. And I absolutely, if I haven't been ghosted by them, I can listen to them. I can listen to their heart. And no one can take that away from me as well.
Yeah, we're going to pick up on those. But you had a friend, Heidi, so I'm just framing this for you.
Thank you.
Because I think what I experienced as a dad, and I'm not sure that you experienced as a mom coming out of broken homes, you can tend to overdo it a little bit. So I don't want to tell everybody how often I took the boys to Disneyland because when I was a kid, I was not able to go. Yes. We couldn't afford it. So we've been far too many times to Disneyland. But you can do that in so many ways. And I think you were in kind of the I love you, well, I love you too kind of modality. And Heidi said something to you.
Yes. So when I became a mom, I was absolutely, completely terrified. Yeah. And because I understood enough to know that you do what is modeled for you. And almost 100% of what was modeled for me was something I did not want to duplicate. So my parenting strategy was cry all the time and get on my knees before Jesus because I just didn't have anything. And I also worried that my children, as you alluded to, didn't know that I love them. And so, because I never knew. So I love you, I love you, I love you. And so my friend visited me for a week and she didn't know, and I didn't even know I had this issue in my heart. Right. The Lord knew, but I never voiced it even in prayer. And at the end of the week, she came up to me and she said, I want you to look me in the eye. She said, I think God has something for me to tell you. Your children know that you love them. And I burst into tears because it was this heavy burden I had been carrying all my life. And she was able, as an outsider, to say what I desperately needed to hear. And the Lord knew and gave her those words to give to me.
Hey, allow me to interrupt for just a moment here to say how much we appreciate you watching. Now, if you find value in this content, subscribe by clicking below. It'll be a big help to us. Let's go ahead and return to the show.
You know, Mary, often we take on, let me just say, I can tend to take on too much responsibility and stress. Jean's certainly there too in parenting our two adult kids. They're now 25 and 23. How is our identity in Christ directly linked to a posture of surrender? This is the question. How do we surrender and say, Lord, okay, they're yours. We did the best we could, and here they are. And now we have to kind of lay the parenting and control stuff down so that they can now be the adults God is calling them to be.
I think part of that comes back to remembering when you were in your 20s and if your parents had overreach, how that made you feel. And so if you can kind of crawl into your skin at that time and remember how joyful it is when your parents just loved you and believed in you and were for you, but they weren't, pulling at the puppet strings. So that's one thing. And then I would say, I think a lot of us have combined and enmeshed our identity with our parenthood. It's a very common thing, especially for evangelical parents. And we feel like how our kids turn out is, that's tied to our identity. And I am certainly not immune to that as well. And so untethering that, and I think this is part of the growth process as a parent of an adult kid, is untethering that, finding your identity in Jesus alone, not in my parenting prowess, not in how my kids turn out, but just in the fact that I am loved by Jesus. And when you untether that, then it is easier to lay down and surrender what they are going to become. And that it's never easy because we start with high control when they're toddlers, don't run in the street, we grab them, and we're constantly working ourselves out of a job, less and less and less control, and then we lose it all. And it's really hard to let go of.
Yeah, but I think you've really expressed that well, because it's our ability as the parent to begin to release that control that's so important. And some of us as parents, we hang on to the control stick. And then we have highly dysfunctional adult children. Mary, I've been able to travel the world, and so often cultural overlays make a difference, right? And in some cultures, it's normal for adult children to remain home until they're married, or in the men's spot, the young men's spot, that they are finished with education and have their job, etc. There seems to be a little bit of a morphing of that in the U.S. It used to be 18, bye-bye, dropped off at college like you were. See you later, call me if you need me, but don't call too much. But that has really morphed to where we continue to take care of our young adult children. They may return home, and that is understandable. In a financial downturn, they lose their job or something happens. It's nice to have a mom and dad safety net to be able to come home to. How should we manage some of that, though, with our adult children that need a little extra nest time?
Yeah, great question, and a little extra nest time. And us in Texas, we don't have basements, so they don't live in the basement, but they live in your living area. I would say that there is a precedent biblically to let someone go, and you see especially in the marital thing of leaving and cleaving, and when there's enmeshment there with the family of origin, it can get very difficult. Yeah. So I definitely see that. But one of the reasons I wrote this book is that we as parents were never given an example or trained about how do you love your kids in their 20s and 30s? Like, when is it okay to extend some money their way, and when is it enabling? And that's where I have to go back to the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit is so wise and knows all of our kids, and they're all different. And sometimes to give money to one would be the right thing to do, but to give money to another would be the wrong thing to do. And it's not just, back and forth. We just have to be super careful and really trust that the Lord has this. And that's where I want to just encourage parents of adult kids. This is a season of your life where you are going to grow so much. There's so much potential.
You thought it was over. Nope.
It's only just begun.
Speak maybe to that application of that. You touched on it, but with younger children, with teens, and then where should we be in that parent-adult-child relationship at 23, 24, 25 when it comes to those control issues, financial or whatever they might be?
Right. Yeah, I think the deepest part of this is we want what's best for our kids. And I'll never say that that's wrong. That is a beautiful part of parenthood, is longing for our kids to thrive and just have this amazing life that you've longed for them to have. But as I mentioned earlier, we're working our way out of a job, and there's high control to low control, and we're moving away from it so that when we release them, we've trained them to live without us, and our control is almost waning. And by the time they're 25, of course, it should be gone. We should be more cheerleaders and coaches than we are directors. And I try to make a rule that I will not give advice unless I am asked. The other thing I think that's in play here in terms of giving to our children is what I walked through in my own grief was when I had the grief in front of me of they're not making the same decisions I would have wanted them to. That grief blinded me and did cause me to want to control and pull the puppet strings. And it wasn't until I walked through that and named the grief, walked through the grief, wrote some lament psalms about it, all of that, that once I grieved it, I was now able to see God working in their lives where I was blind to it before. I could see, just like God had breadcrumbs for me, I could see that He was laying breadcrumbs for them. And it was the most beautiful treasure hunt that I had ever seen. But this grief over my face that I could not see, I had to work through that. So maybe someone listening today needs to remember it's important to grieve. If the expectations weren't met, your kids are making decisions that are breaking your heart, grieve it. Talk about it.
Name it.
But the parents were terrified to do that because it's an admission that we didn't do a good job. At least that's what we're thinking.
There's a super connection there. I mean, it starts when your kid's throwing the tantrum at the grocery store, which you, when you were single, said would never happen when I'm a parent. And then it happens, right? And I mean, I think that embarrassment begins then. And it rolls and gets more mature, like they're making the wrong decisions. And that is so embarrassing to us as a family. People at church, what are they going to say? I mean, whatever it might be. Let me ask you this. What's the poignant question you encourage parents to ask God? I always love these. What would you ask God about your parenting? But what do you encourage parents to ask or to consider with the Lord about their child's behavior and decisions after they've left the home?
Yeah, so the question that kids are always asking with their behavior, whether they're 4 or 24, is, will my parents love me if? And that is why the whole book is structured around 1 Corinthians 13, which was not written to people getting married. It was written to a broken church with broken relationships. So we're talking about what is actual love. And love is this supernatural thing that the Lord gives us, this agape, is I'm going to love you even if you disappoint me. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't speak the truth in love. It doesn't mean that. But it does mean that that's the fundamental question that all of us are asking everyone. Will you love me if I fail you? Will you love me if I walk away? Will you love me if I have same-sex attraction? Will you love me if I yell at the church? Will you love all of these things? They're asking you that. And so parents, we have the mandate of loving them. And that can look different with each child. And again, that's where I go back to the Holy Spirit. It's so important to hear the Spirit and how He directs you.
You recommend a two-fold approach to mending a broken relationship with an adult child. When the Lord says we are made for relationship, first with Him and then with others, we go by that so fast. And it's probably the most powerful part of understanding being made in God's image, that we're made for relationship. And that includes with our adult children.
It does.
But it starts in childhood. Can they trust you? Can they come to you with concerns and questions? Do you lecture them? Speak to all of that.
First, I'll just raise my hand and say I
am not
lectured.
perfect.
Yes. You know, the part of restoration of a relationship is it always involves going first, and it involves humility. And so one of the things that I've done constantly with my kids, almost to the point that they're like, Mom, stop it, which is, I'm so sorry I did that when you were 10 years old. Could you please forgive me? I'm sorry when I did that when you were 11. Please forgive me. I yelled and raised my voice when you were 15. Please forgive me. And they're like, Mom, just stop. We forgive you. But it's very important to me to name what I feel like were my failures and ask for forgiveness, and also ask them into that space in a conversation and say, is there something that really harmed you? I want to hear you. And I may not have seen it the same way, but I want to enter into that pain. And that's the start. That humility is the start of restoration, is that admission. Because if you've grown up in a home where a parent has never once apologized, you know how crazy making it is.
Yeah.
This is Focus on the Family with Jim Daly, and today Mary DeMuth is our guest, and we're talking about some of the content in her terrific book, Love, Pray, Listen, Parenting Your Wayward Adult Kids with Joy. And we want to encourage you to get a copy of this book and other resources to help you in your parenting journey. Stop by the website. The link is in the description below. And by the way, if you appreciated what you've watched today, leave a comment and click the subscribe button below.
Sadly, 2 of her 3 children did walk away from the faith. And yet she continues to reach out to them in the love of Christ. You might be right in that same spot. It's not uncommon. And those of us, parents of 20-somethings, maybe even 30-somethings, probably are crying many nights to pray for our kids and plead with the Lord to draw them back into faith with Him. And we're going to give you some good suggestions on how to continue to parent a wayward child. So many parents that contact us here at Focus on the Family are in this space. And it shows you how common a problem it is. And it seems like something has been uncorked in them, something the parents never saw. This behavior that is so outside of what they had hoped for. What do you do with those immediate emotions when you find out, okay, this is what's going on? How do you respond with an adult child in that context versus a teenager?
Yeah, so when they're under your roof, you do have a little bit more say in their behavior. You can give them a curfew. You can say, if you do this, this will be the consequence.
Yeah, restrict rights.
Right, exactly, all those things. But once they're far away in another environment, it's very hard. And that's where I get back to give advice when it's asked, not unsolicited advice if you can. It's hard. You have to bite your tongue a lot.
What's your report card on that? What I mean on that is, I love that advice, but are you an A student when it comes
Probably
to that,
a
or
C
a B?
plus. I'm a C plus.
I mean, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 isn't bad, but that's so hard for us because we're in that modality for so long to correct, to give input, to encourage, and then we do it. We do it at 23, and they're going, really?
It's like, because it's like a divorce in a way, because you've played this role for 18 years and it doesn't just snap in half in a moment when a birthday rolls around or they go to college or they go off on their own. It doesn't do that. So it's a cultivation. That's where I'm talking about just our relationship with the Lord of giving him the grief of my child is making these decisions. I'm going to get on my knees about it. I'm going to even talk to my friends about it in a non-gossipy way, but just to shoulder the burden with other people so that I don't go crazy. Those are normal things that we have to do. And also to have accountability to say, hey, I don't want to, be heavy-handed to my 27-year-old. Please help me. Having community is really helpful there.
Yeah. What should healthy involvement look like with our 20-something?
I think we have to let them lead that. And some are on a process of they just need to separate in order to kind of get their heads on straight. And we have to respect their boundaries. Now, the line may be if they're hurting others and hurting themselves, that's a line that you may need to intervene in as someone who loves them. And so that's hard to know, but that's kind of the line that I've kind of developed. But I think it is, our tendency is to want to reparent. And it's really hard to overcome that, that unction that we have.
Oh, so true. How do we navigate the financial side of things, the gifts? I will admit, I probably lean toward overdoing it.
Are you a softie?
I am the softie. Yeah, Gene would say, "Yes, you're the softie," and it's probably because of my background of not having, and I don't want my kids to not have, so I can overindulge in that way. But how do we create the right balance? What is the right balance? I mean, let's start with that question.
Yeah, that's really hard. I mean, there's times. I do remember when all of our kids were done with college and we were done paying for it, we kind of had a little party because we got a huge pay raise and suddenly we were like making ends meet and all of that because we weren't paying for our kids and their insurance and all that, their phones. So we now have more means than we did before. And that is the question that we're asking ourselves. So what we try to do is when we're benevolent, we try not to have it be predictable benevolence, but just to bless them in surprising ways. And that comes from listening to their lives. And when things are hard for them, but without having some sort of prescribed way, we'll just send them a check or Venmo them something. And that way it's unpredictable and it's not like, oh, I expect my mom and dad to always bail me out.
I like that. And there is, I mean, this is so much of life, isn't it, Mary? I mean, on the one end, you're so tight, it's ridiculous, right? I mean, they're only in their 20s and occasionally they might need a little help or a little blessing, right? You don't have to be so tight that all they know is, don't ask mom or dad. Or on the other side, so much that you're really stunting their ability to launch. And it's that balance. And that's wisdom, being able to know when to do the right thing. But I like that idea of unpredictable. I think that's really good.
So in the context of wayward children, Mary, how do we do that? Because I might have a wayward child who doesn't want to bother me or doesn't feel like they can approach me. Maybe I've put off a vibe of I'm not safe or you should just do this. They're not connected to a church. So how do we navigate that where I'm pretty sure they're not going to church? So who's stepping in? Oh, there's an element of letting go there. It's hard.
It is. And that's, again, where we have to go back to the Lord and ask for wisdom is, would this be a benefit to them? Like maybe I'm funding their drug lifestyle, so you wouldn't want to do that. But maybe this would be part of reconciliation for me to help them without them asking. I don't know. And like I said, every child is different. One, that would be in emboldening them in their sin, and another, it would be blessing them. So whether they're walking with the Lord or not, we still need to be listening to their lives. We still need to be attuned and pay attention, because I think parenting in the adult years is so exciting, because I will hear something from one of my daughters and I'll be like, oh my gosh, they really need this item that, maybe it's $25, but they can't afford it. And I'm just going to send it to them from Amazon. And they're so shocked and surprised, and it builds relationship. I love that.
Boy, that's so good. That's a great place to focus on, is the building of the relationship. And you had a grandmother that did communicate love to you. Last time we talked a lot about your broken family origin story and difficult relationship with your mom, who married many times and all that. But your grandma seemed to be like a steady beacon for you. How did she communicate love to you?
Well, that was one of those examples, I think, that carried over into my adulthood with my adult kids. She would she knew that I liked decorating and art and all of that kind of stuff. So she would cut things out of old magazines. And even though I even got that magazine, she would send them to me in the mail, in the days of mail. And it just communicated to me that she loved me. She saw me, she knew what my interests were, and she sought to brighten my day. And that has translated to me as a parent of looking at those adult kids and thinking, how can I be like that to them?
Yeah.
And that was very informative. I felt so very loved when that happened.
Mary, there's got to be parents who are in this spot, and I hope you're tuning in, or maybe somebody's encouraged you to listen. And I hope you're encouraged in that way. Even prayer for some of these adult children gets wearying. You've been praying for years. There's no change, or it's gotten worse. How do you stay motivated to keep trusting the Lord? And every night, 3 times a week, whatever it ends up being, you're saying, Lord, it's the same prayer. Can you move that child closer to you? Can you grab them by the shirt collar and drag them towards you? I mean, you say it the same way, differently. But how do you keep the stamina spiritually, emotionally, to stay engaged and not give up?
That's a really good question. And I think that's where we get back to a strong theological understanding of prayer, and a strong understanding of the sovereignty of God, and the swift, what we see as the lack of swiftness of God. And I will tell you that there were many times where I thought, this is not doing anything, forgetting that the Lord's seeing it as a resolved problem. I'm seeing it down here as an unresolved problem. And we have too small of a scope, and we try to demand that the Lord answer our prayer for our adult child in a minute, in 10 days, in 4 months, and we're not seeing the wide picture. It took the Lord 45 years to answer this long-term prayer that I felt was an impossible prayer. I did not think it would ever be answered, and I had to resolve myself that it never would be. So we have to have a long view of prayer and realize, persevere through it. It matters. God's timing is not the same as ours, and we don't get to dictate to the Lord the timing in which he answers our prayers.
And even your response to that, hearing it, will indicate what you need to do. Because some people are going to go, oh, she doesn't understand. That's a response of, Lord, you're not working fast enough.
Yeah.
Allow me to interrupt for a moment to say how much I appreciate you watching. If you find value in this content, please subscribe by clicking below. It'll be a big help. Now, let's get back to the show. Mary, you've written about Psalms of Lament. I think of reading the Psalms. I get a lot from reading from them. They comfort me. I haven't thought about applying that to parenting grief. Describe that parenting grief, the declaration of faith, the petition. Just run us through that process to help us.
One of the joys of my life is teaching through the lament psalms. And a lament psalm is a psalm, there's many of them in the book of Psalms, that begins with a complaint and ends with praise. And there's so many of them, and you can look them up and do a little Google search on what's a lament psalm, and you can read them. But what I train people to do is writing your own, and it begins with honesty. And I encourage parents to say, Lord, this is what I expected. This is what I wanted. Why aren't you there? Why aren't you rescuing my child? Why are they wayward? Why? And then after that, the psalmist goes into these declarations of, but I believe that you are good. I believe that you are hearing me. I believe you own a cattle on 1,000 hills. I believe this. I believe that. And I'm going to choose to praise you even before the answer is given. And I've taken parents through this, and there's usually not one dry eye in the house because they are able, at least on paper, they're not having to share it with their peers. They can say, I am disappointed, God. This didn't happen the way I wanted it to. And I'm just so grateful for that model in the Psalms of teaching us how to work through our pain through a very simple process like that.
No, and that's so good and so healthy to be able to do something like that. A touchy subject, LGBT issues are all around now. Public schools, it seems like they're just flooded with this idea, even elementary schools in some states, because of education decisions to allow them to think about these things. And I think some of these victories in that space are like drops of water on a desert journey. I mean, it's just small little incremental gains that you might have. You had a couple, Ronnie and Daniela, that went through something like this. Describe it.
Yeah, they definitely walked through this, and they had to work through this idea of how are we going to act? How are we going to love? How are we going to come alongside? And they had this experience where their child came to dinner with their significant other, and as usual, they got around the table and they prayed for their meal. And they even prayed for this significant other, and that person started crying. And it touched her. And I think that's something that we don't have to change who we are as Christ-following parents in order to actually step into a space and love our kids. We don't have to change our theology to love our kids. We don't have to do any of that. We can be good listeners. We can walk alongside, but we can pray at the dinner table. You never know what's going to happen. I just want to give every parent in that position a hug, because it's not something that we were prepared to walk through. There were no parenting books in the 90s really talking about this, or the early aughts. And so a lot of parents that are walking through it are doing it kind of blind and kind of bumbling their way. And some will kind of err on the side of everything they do, I love. And then on the other side, they might be like, I'm going to ghost you forever and never talk to you again. And I do believe that there is a narrow way that we can go, which is sticking to your beliefs. You get to have your own beliefs. The Lord allows you to have your own beliefs. But you can also err on the side of love at all times, and you can, be involved in people's lives.
Yeah, and you know what? It's imperfect.
It is.
But I would encourage people to stay sound in your theology. That's number one in terms of what does God expect of me, right? And I so appreciate that. I love the idea of praying there, and that it touched her heart so much, their daughter's partner, that she cried.
Yeah.
And that's just such a thoughtful thing to do. As a parent seeks empathy, like we're describing, to be there, to be present, you suggested two key things to keep in mind about the child's behavior, the adult child's behavior, and the parent's heart. What are they?
Our children's behavior reveals their heart. So if we're listening to our children, we're going to be watching them. We're going to be seeing what kind of choices that they're making. And I think also as parents, we're revealing our heart by what we're saying. And we have to, sometimes things come out of my mouth that I want to take it back in.
Yes.
But I have noticed that for myself. It's been really good. Like, oh my goodness, that was a very judgy, controlling thing that I just said. Jesus, have mercy on me. And then in the next breath, if I'm smart enough in the moment or teachable enough, will you forgive me? I shouldn't have said that. That's kind of
which is really good. And that way you're progressing hopefully together toward a destination of good relationship and hopefully Christ-centered relationship. To me, that's the only hope, that they're connected.
Yes.
And if you choose to disconnect out of temperament, they're just not doing it the way I would do it, you're probably reducing the opportunity and the chance that they're going to make it back. I think. I mean, the Lord can do anything. I want to mention that idea of temperament because I'm thinking of parenting styles, and temperament plays into that. The kind of the quiet dad who doesn't say much, and you don't even know what his childhood was like because he doesn't talk about it. He's all inside. Or you might add to that, he's a very black and white thinker. He's an engineer. He's a CPA. I mean, I'm just saying we're born with a certain temperament that can trip us up in our parenting of adult children. Those are very deeply rooted behavior patterns that we have. And if we're making that mistake, that we're keeping a ledger of our children's activities and behaviors, because that's how I'm wired. They did 3 things right last week and 18 things wrong. How do we manage that? How do we let that go?
I think we can, if we're still list keepers, we can still keep a ledger, but catch them doing right and tell them. Every kid, I need to hear from people in my life, I'm really proud of you. That was an amazing thing you did. I'm constantly doing that with my kids. If I see that they got a promotion in their job or they bought a house or whatever it is that they've done, I am so proud of you. That I never did that when I was your age. You are exceeding beyond my wildest expectations. And not just, saying things to say things, but actual genuine, I am noticing your life and I am so proud of you. That's really important. I also just wanted to, before I forget, is address the idea of parental estrangement, because there are some people listening today that are brokenhearted and they have done everything that they can and their kids have walked away from them and it's been a decade and they're asking the question, will it ever be okay? And I can't answer that, but I can say it is hard and I'm so sorry that you're walking through that. And to remember that God in the Garden of Eden was a perfect parent and his kids walked away from him. And he's had the entire human race walk away from him. And I can tell you this, that you will have deeper camaraderie with Jesus in those moments because he absolutely empathizes and understands with the entire human race walking away from him.
Boy, that's a good place to land. The other thing is just always hold out hope. Don't give up hope, and don't change or become sour in the relationship. And that's your only chance, your only hope for it, right? With the Lord's help. So, Mary, thank you so much for being with us. This has been terrific. It's a topic that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about, but you've hit all the high notes today. And if you are in need, or you know somebody who needs a copy of Mary's book, Love, Pray, Listen, Parenting Your Wayward Adult Kids with Joy, that's the key. I love that it just pops out on the cover. Get in touch with us. If you are in a place where you can't afford to make a donation to Focus, we get it. Just let us know and we'll send you the book, and trust others will cover the cost of that. If you can make a donation of any amount, monthly or a one-time gift, we'll send it as our way of saying thank you for being part of the ministry, and you get a great resource.
Yeah, join the support team of Focus on the Family with your donation when you call 800, the letter A in the word family, or stop by our website. The link is in the description below. And be sure to click the subscribe button if you enjoy these programs, and be sure to tell a friend as well to listen in, watch, and benefit from what we've shared today. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. I'm John Fuller, inviting you back as we once again help you and your family thrive in Christ.